The palace had survived wars, betrayals, and centuries of whispered secrets, but it had never prepared itself for a woman who chose truth over silence. Rain slid down the towering windows of Ashbourne Palace, blurring the lights of London into trembling gold streaks. Inside, the corridors lay hushed, thick with the kind of silence that only ancient power can create, a silence built not on peace but on carefully buried truths. Lady Catherine Hale walked alone. She had lived behind these walls for over a decade, yet tonight the palace felt unfamiliar, almost hostile. Every step echoed louder than it should have, as if the stones themselves were listening. She clutched a folded letter inside her palm. It wasn't supposed to exist. It wasn't supposed to be found. And yet, there it was. The letter had slipped from a false drawer in the private study of Queen Consort Amelia Rowan, a woman the world adored for her elegance, loyalty, and unwavering support of King Alaric III. A woman who, until tonight, Catherine believed she understood. The discovery. It had started innocently. A soft light beneath the study door. A muffled sob. A knock made out of concern, not curiosity. Catherine had expected tears, exhaustion, maybe marital strain. She had not expected panic. Amelia had been sitting at her desk, shoulders shaking, hands trembling as if she had just read something that had torn her life in two. Papers lay scattered, official seals, aged documents, ink faded by time. And then, the drawer. The false bottom. The letter. Catherine hadn't meant to read it. But some truths refused to remain hidden. The words that changed everything. The paper was yellowed, brittle at the edges. The handwriting was elegant, deliberate. For the sake of the crown, the truth must remain sealed. The succession depends upon it. Catherine's breath had caught. Below it, names, dates. A lineage that did not align with the story the world had been told. Not rumors. Not speculation. Documentation. And when Amelia realized what Catherine was holding, the color drained from her face. "You weren't meant to see that," Amelia whispered. Not angrily. Terrified. A confession born of fear. That night, Amelia spoke, not as a queen, but as a woman drowning beneath a secret too heavy to carry. She spoke of her grandmother. Of a locked chest in an attic. Of diaries written during wartime. Of meetings between advisors, officials, and men who believed stability mattered more than truth. They said the nation needed certainty, Amelia said, tears streaking down her cheeks. They said history could be adjusted. Catherine listened, frozen. Because the implication was unthinkable. The documents were real. If the lineage had been altered, then King Alaric's claim to the throne was not what the world believed it to be. And neither was the future of Catherine's children. The weight of silence. For 3 days, Catherine carried the secret like a stone in her chest. She smiled for cameras. She laughed with her children. She stood beside her husband, Prince William Hart, knowing that one truth could shatter everything he had been raised to become. At breakfast, her youngest asked why she looked sad. She had no answer that wouldn't break the world. When secrets are no longer safe. On the 4th morning the call came. Her phone vibrated before dawn. Amelia's voice was barely audible. "Catherine, someone knows." The study had been ransacked. No valuables taken. Only documents. Only the truth. The silence that followed was heavier than fear. Because this meant one thing. They were not alone. And the palace had never been kind to those who threatened its foundations. The palace didn't feel like a home anymore. It felt like a machine, beautiful on the outside, cold at its core, designed to protect itself at any cost. Catherine Hale stood in the doorway of Queen Consort Amelia Rowan's private study and stared at the quiet devastation. Someone had entered the most guarded residence in the country, bypassed protocol, bypassed locks, bypassed history. And stolen paper. Not jewels. Not money. Not artwork. They stole proof. And as the morning light crept across the carved wooden floor, Catherine understood something with terrifying clarity. This wasn't merely a secret anymore. This was a hunt. The warning in the silence. Amelia sat rigidly in a chair, her hands folded so tightly her knuckles looked pale as marble. She was the kind of woman who never showed weakness in public, who had learned to smile through discomfort and speak with calm authority even when her heart cracked. But now her eyes were raw, sleepless, haunted. "They knew what to take," Amelia whispered, voice trembling. "They didn't touch anything else." Catherine walked to the desk and traced a scratch along the filing cabinet lock. Clean, purposeful, professional. "This wasn't a burglar," Catherine said. "It was a message." Amelia's throat bobbed as she swallowed. "Or a warning." Catherine's stomach tightened. "It's also proof of something worse." Amelia looked up, confusion flickering. Catherine lowered her voice. It means we're not the only ones who know. The sentence hung in the air like a blade. Amelia's gaze drifted toward the tall windows, as if expecting to see eyes watching from the gardens. I thought the secret was buried, Amelia said. I thought the people who built the cover-up were gone. Catherine's voice softened, not with comfort but with truth. Secrets don't die, Amelia. They get inherited. The envelope that burns. Catherine opened her handbag carefully and pulled out the sealed envelope Amelia had given her days earlier. Amelia's breath caught when she saw it. You still have it, she said. I never let it leave my sight, Catherine replied. Amelia pressed her fingers to her mouth as if holding back a sob. I made duplicates, Catherine continued, steady. Everything you gave me, I copied it again. If anyone tries to erase this, they'll have to erase me too. Amelia's eyes filled with tears. And in that moment, something shifted between them. They weren't just two women trapped inside tradition anymore. They were allies. Two people forced into a terrible role. To decide whether truth was worth the cost of peace. Catherine looked at her. We can't wait now, she said. We need to act. Amelia exhaled shakily. Yes, she whispered. But we must be smart. Catherine leaned in. Then tell me everything you haven't told me. Amelia hesitated. Catherine's gaze didn't soften. Amelia, she said, someone broke into your study? That means the palace is compromised. If you still have something you're hiding from me, it's not just your burden anymore. The consort's lips parted slightly. She reached into her sleeve pocket, an old habit from before she became royal, and pulled out a folded piece of paper worn at the creases. Catherine stared at it. What is that? Amelia swallowed. It's the one thing they didn't take, she said. Because they didn't know I had it. Catherine's pulse quickened. Show me. Amelia unfolded it slowly. It was a photocopy of a registry entry. An old line in an old book. A name written in ink. Catherine read it once. Then again. Then she felt the blood drain from her face. Because the name didn't belong. It wasn't in any official narrative. It wasn't in public genealogy. It wasn't in the polished, televised history that millions worshipped. And yet it was here, quiet, undeniable, stubborn. Sebastian Rowan. Catherine's voice came out as a whisper. Rowan, that's your family name. Amelia's eyes closed. Yes, she said. My grandmother wrote about him. Catherine's throat went dry. Who is he? Amelia stared at Catherine like she was about to set fire to the world. He might be the branch they erased, she said. Catherine's heart slammed against her ribs. You're saying? Amelia nodded once. If the old records are true, she said, Sebastian Rowan's bloodline might outrank the current line. Catherine stumbled backward, her hand gripping the edge of the desk. That meant the crown might not belong to King Alaric at all. It meant Prince William's destiny could be built on paper that had been rewritten. It meant Catherine's children, George, Charlotte, and Louis, could be living inside a story that wasn't theirs. Catherine forced herself to breathe. Where is Sebastian Rowan now? She asked. Amelia's voice barely carried. That's the problem. She held up the paper again, pointing at a note in faded script. Last known residence, Northbridge. Catherine's brows knit. Northbridge is a town nobody pays attention to, Amelia finished. And the diary suggests he disappeared. Catherine stared at her. Disappeared? Amelia's lips trembled. Some people vanish, she said. When stability needs it. The decision no one wants to make. They sat in silence for a long moment. Then Catherine spoke with a firmness she didn't feel. We find him, she said. Amelia's eyes widened. Catherine leaned forward. If there is a rightful line, if the monarchy is built on a lie, then we don't get to pretend we can keep the lie alive just because the truth is inconvenient. Amelia shook her head, panicked. You don't understand what you're suggesting. If we locate him, or his descendants, then the question becomes unavoidable. The palace won't allow that. Catherine's voice hardened. Then the palace can learn what it feels like to be powerless. Amelia stared at her, stunned. Catherine's expression softened slightly. Amelia, she said, my children will one day carry this institution. If it's built on deception, it will collapse under them. I won't let them inherit a ticking bomb. Amelia's eyes glistened. And what about my husband? She whispered. What about King Alaric? He's not a villain. He's not cruel. He's a man who waited his whole life to serve. Catherine's voice lowered, gentle. I know, she said. That's why we must be careful. This isn't about humiliation. It's about moral courage. Amelia looked away. Moral courage gets people destroyed, she said. Catherine's response was quiet but unwavering. Then we make sure we're not alone. The private investigator. That afternoon, Amelia arranged a discreet meeting outside palace grounds, in a quiet corner of a private museum, closed to the public. A tall man waited near the archival wing, wearing a simple coat and an expression that suggested he'd seen too much of human nature to be surprised by anything. His name was Julian Markham. He wasn't connected to the palace. He wasn't bound by royal loyalty. And most importantly, he wasn't afraid of titles. Amelia approached first, Catherine close behind. Julian nodded politely. Your Majesty. Amelia flinched. Please don't call me that. Julian's eyes flicked to Catherine. And you are the one who carries the weight with her shoulders straight, he said. Catherine didn't smile. We need answers. Julian gestured toward a small private reading room. Then we should speak somewhere the walls don't have ears. Inside, Julian spread documents across the table, photographs, registry copies, maps. I traced the name, he said simply. Sebastian Rowan. Amelia's breath hitched. And? Julian's expression tightened. He existed, he said. That part is true. Catherine held her breath. Julian continued. He was born in 1944. The original record lists him as connected to the sovereign line through a private marriage, a marriage that was never publicly acknowledged. Amelia's hands trembled. Catherine asked, why would that be hidden? Julian's gaze was sharp. Because it complicated succession, he said. And the country was at war. Stability mattered more than honesty. Amelia whispered, my grandmother wrote those exact words. Julian slid a photograph forward. It was black and white, grainy old. A young woman in a formal dress. A man in uniform beside her. Catherine leaned closer. The man's face looked familiar in a strange way. Not identical, but echoing the features of people in official portraits. Julian tapped the photo. This was taken at an estate outside Edinburgh, he said. Private. Unofficial. But the uniform markings are real. Amelia's eyes widened. That's him? Julian nodded. Sebastian, he said. And the woman beside him? That's not who the official record claims was there. Amelia swallowed. Who is she? Julian answered with care. A woman whose name was removed from public documents, he said. A woman the palace erased. Catherine's voice turned ice cold. Which means there was a deliberate rewrite, she said. Julian nodded slowly. And here's where it gets worse, he said. He pulled out a map and circled a location. Sebastian didn't die, Julian said. Not officially. Amelia's face went pale. What do you mean? Julian looked at her. He disappeared from records at age 19, he said. No death certificate. No burial. No official emigration. Just gone. Catherine felt a chill crawl up her spine. Someone removed him, she whispered. Julian didn't confirm directly. He didn't need to. Instead, he slid another document across the table. A list of names. A list of people who had worked in archival adjustments during wartime. At the bottom, one name was underlined. Sir Edmund Varick, Royal Secretary, deceased. But beside it, a note in Julian's handwriting. Varick's protégé still alive. Still active. Amelia's voice broke. There's someone still protecting the lie. Julian's gaze hardened. Yes, he said. And if I'm correct, he knows you're looking. The moment Catherine realizes the truth, Catherine's mind raced. If someone was actively protecting the cover-up, it meant the lie wasn't just history. It was policy. It was an ongoing decision, renewed every day, every generation. And suddenly, Catherine understood why the break-in felt personal. It wasn't only about documents. It was about control. The palace had spent centuries teaching the world that the crown was sacred, unchallenged, unquestionable. But crowns weren't sacred. People just acted like they were. Catherine looked at Julian. Can you find him? She asked. Julian's eyes narrowed. Find who? Catherine spoke the name like a challenge. Sebastian Rowan, she said. Or his descendants. Julian hesitated just a fraction. Then he leaned forward. That's a dangerous request. Catherine's expression didn't change. Yes, she said. But it's necessary. Amelia's voice rose in panic. Catherine. Catherine reached across the table and took Amelia's trembling hand. Look at me, she said quietly. Amelia's eyes met hers. Catherine's voice softened. You said truth matters, she said. If you still believe that, then we do this. Together. Amelia swallowed hard. Julian watched them both. Then he sighed. I can try, he said. But you must understand, once I pull this thread, something will pull back. Catherine nodded. Let it, she said. Julian slid one last paper forward. A modern photograph this time. Color. Taken from a distance. A man in his 40s leaving a small building in Northbridge. Ordinary clothes. Ordinary posture. But something about his face. Something in the eyes. It carried the quiet weight of someone born into a life he never got to live. Julian tapped the photo once. This is Adrian Rowan, he said. A teacher. A widower. Father of one. Amelia's breath caught in her throat. Catherine's heart pounded. Julian's next words landed like thunder. I believe, he said, Adrian Rowan is Sebastian's son. The palace makes its move. Catherine and Amelia left the museum separately, careful, controlled. But the moment Catherine stepped into her car, her phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. No introduction. No signature. Only a sentence. Stop digging or the children will pay for the adults' curiosity. Catherine's blood turned to ice. Her hands trembled so violently she nearly dropped the phone. She stared at the words again and again as if looking would make them less real. They weren't just watching. They were threatening. And they weren't threatening her status. They were threatening her babies. Catherine forced herself to breathe through the panic. Then she did something she had never done before. She didn't cry. She didn't collapse. She didn't run to the nearest palace aide for comfort. She straightened her spine. And she became dangerous. End of part 2 cliffhanger. That night, Catherine stood in the nursery doorway and watched her children sleeping. Soft breaths, peaceful faces, unaware their lives had become leverage in a war of truth. And in the hallway beyond, she heard footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Stopping outside her door. A knock. Not loud. Not urgent. But final. Catherine's heart hammered. She opened the door. A palace courier stood there, holding an official envelope stamped with the royal seal. He didn't look at her warmly. He didn't smile. He simply handed it over and said, Her Ladyship is requested to attend a private audience with the king at midnight. Catherine stared at the seal. At the time. At the implication. Because only one thing could explain it. King Alaric III knew. And whatever his next move was, it was about to shake the palace to its foundations. If you're ready, reply. Midnight inside Ashbourne Palace felt heavier than any hour Catherine Hale had ever known. The corridors were empty, stripped of ceremony and warmth, illuminated only by low amber lights that cast long shadows against stone walls carved centuries ago. Every step Catherine took echoed like a question with no safe answer. She didn't look back. She couldn't. Because if she did, she knew she would think of her children asleep in their beds, and fear would weaken her resolve. Tonight, fear was a luxury she could not afford. The audience. The doors to the king's private council chamber opened without announcement. King Alaric III stood near the tall windows, his hands clasped behind his back. He wasn't wearing ceremonial robes. No crown. No regalia. Just a man. A tired one. Catherine, he said calmly. Thank you for coming. She bowed, not deeply, not theatrically. Respectful. Controlled. You asked for a private audience, Your Majesty? Alaric turned to face her. His eyes, usually warm in public, were sharp tonight. Calculating. Yes, he said. Because something has come to my attention. Catherine felt her pulse hammer, but she kept her face neutral. I've been informed, the king continued, that certain investigations are taking place. Ones that should not exist. Catherine said nothing. Alaric stepped closer. Tell me, he said quietly, how much do you know? The room felt suddenly smaller. This was the moment. The line between silence and truth. Catherine inhaled slowly. I know enough to understand, she said, that the history we honor may not be the history that happened. Alaric's jaw tightened. That's a dangerous thing to say, he replied. So is lying to a nation, Catherine answered softly. For a moment, neither spoke. Then Alaric did something unexpected. He sighed. Not the sigh of a monarch, but of a man who had been carrying something far longer than anyone realized. You think I don't know, he said. Catherine's breath caught. You think this secret lived in one drawer, in one diary, in one family. He looked away toward the darkened gardens. I was warned, he continued, when I took the crown. I was told there were things best left untouched. Catherine stared at him. You knew, she whispered. Alaric nodded once. I didn't know everything, he said, but I knew enough. Her voice trembled despite her effort. And you chose silence. Alaric's gaze hardened. I chose stability, he said. Which is what a king is sworn to do. Catherine took a step forward. At the cost of truth? She asked. At the cost of chaos, he replied sharply. Do you have any idea what happens if legitimacy is questioned? Markets collapse. Faith erodes. The country fractures. Catherine's voice rose, not loud but fierce. And what happens when lies rot from the inside? Alaric looked at her for a long moment. Then he said something that chilled her blood. You are not as protected as you believe, Catherine. Her stomach dropped. I've received reports, the king continued calmly, that certain lines were crossed. A private investigator. A name that should have stayed buried. Catherine's hands clenched. Adrian Rowan, she said. The king's eyes flickered, just slightly. Do not say that name again, he warned. Catherine's fear ignited into resolve. That man has a right to know who he is. Alaric stepped closer. That man is alive because he doesn't know, he said. The implication slammed into her. You're saying? I'm saying, the king interrupted, that this institution survives because some truths remain unspoken. Catherine shook her head slowly. My children are not bargaining chips, she said. Alaric stiffened. I would never. Then explain the message, Catherine said, her voice trembling now. Explain why someone threatened my children. The king's expression darkened. I did not authorize that, he said. But you didn't stop it either, she replied. Silence. And in that silence, Catherine saw something crack. Amelia's collapse. Across the palace, Amelia Rowan sat alone in her chambers, staring at her reflection in the mirror. She barely recognized herself. The queen consort, the symbol of loyalty, felt like a fraud. A knock sounded at her door. She didn't turn. Come in. The door opened. Not a lady in waiting. Not a confidant. A man in a dark suit stepped inside, his posture precise, his expression unreadable. Sir Malcolm Vire, he said, bowing slightly. Royal Historical Office. Amelia's heart sank. You're early, she said. He smiled faintly. Events have accelerated. She rose slowly. What do you want? To ensure, he replied smoothly, that certain records remain where they belong. Amelia's voice shook. You took them. He didn't deny it. They were never yours, he said. They belong to the crown. They belong to the truth, Amelia snapped. Sir Malcolm's smile faded. The truth, he said coldly, is a tool, not a virtue. Amelia clenched her fists. You erased a man, she said. You erased a family. Sir Malcolm stepped closer. And preserved a nation. She stared at him. What happens now, she asked. He leaned in. Now, he whispered, you choose whether you remain queen consort, or become a liability. Her breath caught. And Catherine, she asked. Sir Malcolm's eyes glinted. She's walking a dangerous line. Adrian Rowan, the life that was stolen. Hundreds of miles away, Adrian Rowan locked the door of his modest Northbridge home and stepped into the cool night air. He had no idea his name was being spoken in palaces. To him, life was simple. Raise his daughter. Survive grief quietly. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He hesitated, then answered. Mr. Rowan, a calm voice said. My name is Julian Markham. I believe we need to talk. Adrian frowned. About what? About your father, Julian said. Adrian's chest tightened. My father died before I was born, he replied. There was a pause. Then, I don't think that's true, Julian said. Adrian stopped walking. The streetlights hummed. What are you saying? Julian's voice was steady. I'm saying your father didn't disappear, he said. He was removed. Adrian's heart pounded. Removed from what? Julian exhaled. From history. The letter that changes everything. Back in the palace, Catherine stood alone in the council chamber. The king had dismissed her, not angrily, not kindly. With finality. She turned to leave when something caught her eye. A drawer. Half open. Inside, an envelope. Unsealed. Unmarked. She hesitated. Then pulled it out. Inside was a single page. Handwritten. She recognized the script immediately. Amelia's grandmother. The last line made Catherine's knees go weak. If the child survives, the lie survives. If the truth awakens, the crown will fall. Below it, a date. And a location. Northbridge. Catherine's breath left her body. Because this wasn't just history. It was a warning. And the truth had already begun to awaken. End of Part 3 cliffhanger. That night, as Catherine returned to her chambers, she found something waiting on her desk. A small velvet box. Inside it, a ring. Heavy. Engraved on the inside with a single word. Rightful. And beneath it, a note written in a firm, elegant hand. The crown remembers who it belongs to. Catherine closed the box slowly, because now she understood. This wasn't about whether the monarchy could survive the truth. It was about who would survive telling it. Dawn arrived without mercy. The kind of dawn that didn't bring relief, but clarity. Catherine Hale stood by the nursery window, watching the first pale light touch the palace gardens. The children were still asleep behind her, wrapped in dreams untouched by crowns, secrets, or threats. She pressed her palm against the glass. Everything she did next would be for them. Even if it meant burning the world they were born into. The ring and the truth. The velvet box lay open on her desk. The ring inside was older than the palace's newest wing, its gold worn smooth by time, its weight unmistakable. It wasn't decorative. It wasn't romantic. It was symbolic. A claim. Catherine turned it over again, tracing the engraving. Rightful. Someone wanted her to understand something very clearly. The truth was no longer hidden. It was choosing sides. Her phone buzzed. A single message from Julian Markham. He's agreed to meet. Adrian doesn't know everything, but he knows enough. Catherine closed her eyes briefly. There would be no going back after this. Adrian Rowan, the moment everything shifts. The cafe in Northbridge was quiet, too quiet for a weekday morning. Adrian Rowan sat near the window, hands wrapped around a mug he hadn't touched. Julian Markham sat across from him, posture calm, face serious. Adrian finally spoke. If this is some kind of joke, he said, it's cruel. Julian didn't flinch. I don't joke about erased bloodlines, he replied. Adrian let out a humorless laugh. My life is ordinary, he said. Painfully ordinary. I teach history to teenagers who don't care about it. I pay bills. I bury grief quietly. Julian nodded. That's often how stolen lives look from the outside. Adrian stiffened. Julian slid a folder across the table. Before you decide whether to walk away, he said, you deserve to see this. Inside were photographs, letters, a birth registry copy that didn't match the official version Adrian had known his entire life. Adrian's hands trembled as he turned the pages. This says my father was someone else, he whispered. Julian's voice was careful. It says your father was Sebastian Rowan, he said. A man removed from public record because his existence complicated power. Adrian swallowed hard. My mother never spoke about him, he said. She said it was safer not to ask. Julian leaned forward. She was right, he said. And wrong. Adrian looked up sharply. Why now, he demanded. Why tell me now? Julian held his gaze. Because the lie is cracking, he said. And people are being threatened to keep it intact. Adrian's jaw tightened. My daughter, he said. If this puts her at risk. Julian shook his head. That's why I came first, he said. To give you a choice. Adrian stared out the window, watching people pass who had no idea their lives were untouched by history's sharpest knives. What choice? He asked quietly. Julian answered with brutal honesty. To remain invisible, he said. Or to exist. Amelia's ultimatum. Inside the palace, Amelia Rowan stood before a mirror, dressed for a public appearance she had no intention of attending. Sir Malcolm Vere stood behind her, reflected faintly in the glass. You will issue a statement, he said calmly. Affirming your loyalty. Denouncing speculation. Amelia met her own eyes in the mirror. And if I refuse? Sir Malcolm's tone remained smooth. Then we begin discussing your exit, he said. Graceful of course. Illness. Fatigue. A desire for privacy. She turned to face him. And Catherine? She asked. Sir Malcolm smiled thinly. She will be handled. Something hardened in Amelia's chest. I spent my life believing loyalty meant silence, she said. But silence didn't protect me. It only made me complicit. Sir Malcolm's gaze sharpened. You are the queen consort, he reminded her. Your duty is to the crown. Amelia stepped closer. No, she said quietly. My duty is to the truth I was too afraid to face. Sir Malcolm's smile vanished. You are making yourself dangerous, he said. Amelia didn't look away. Then so be it. Catherine and the king, the final warning. King Alaric III stood in the private library, hands braced against a table cluttered with reports, forecasts, and assessments labeled confidential. Catherine entered without ceremony. You sent for me, she said. He didn't turn. You're pushing this too far, he said. Catherine stepped closer. There is no safe distance left, she replied. He finally faced her. You think revealing the truth will cleanse everything, he said. But truth doesn't arrive alone. It brings chaos. Catherine met his gaze steadily. And lies bring rot, she said. Which one do you think lasts longer? Alaric's voice dropped. I can protect your children, he said. The words landed like poison. Catherine's eyes blazed. They are not yours to protect, or threaten. He flinched. You don't understand what's coming, he said. If this breaks publicly, the institution collapses. Catherine's voice softened but didn't waver. Then maybe, she said, it deserves to. Silence fell between them. Then Alaric spoke quietly. If Adrian Rowan speaks, he said, the crown will not survive intact. Catherine nodded. I know, she said. Alaric searched her face. Will you stop him? He asked. Catherine answered without hesitation. No. Adrian makes his choice. That night, Adrian sat beside his daughter's bed, watching her sleep. She clutched a book to her chest, one she had fallen asleep reading, Stories of Kings and Queens. He brushed her hair back gently. He thought of the life he had lived, quiet, decent, unnoticed. He thought of the life stolen from his father. And of the future his daughter deserved. When Julian called, Adrian didn't hesitate. I'll speak, he said. Julian exhaled slowly. There will be consequences. Adrian's voice was steady. There already were, he replied. I just didn't know their names. The story leaks. By morning, rumors surfaced. A journalist received an anonymous envelope. A genealogy forum lit up with unexplained discrepancies. A single phrase began trending quietly, then loudly. Rightful line. Sir Malcolm stormed into the royal offices. It's happening, he said. Someone leaked fragments. King Alaric closed his eyes. Amelia stood in the doorway. I didn't stop it, she said. Alaric looked at her. Did you start it? He asked. She met his gaze. Yes. End of part 4 cliffhanger. That evening, Catherine stood before a mirror, holding the ring in her palm. Outside, the press gathered. Phones rang endlessly. History leaned forward, impatient. And somewhere in Northbridge, Adrian Rowan prepared to speak publicly, for the first time in his life, not as a teacher, but as the man history tried to erase. The truth was no longer knocking. It was about to be heard. The world didn't end when the truth arrived. It held its breath. Cameras lined the narrow street in Northbridge long before sunrise. Reporters whispered into microphones. Analysts speculated. Citizens refreshed their screens with trembling fingers. No one knew exactly what would be said. Only that someone history had erased was about to speak. Adrian Rowan steps into the light. Adrian Rowan stood behind a simple podium in a modest hall borrowed from the local council. There were no banners. No symbols. No royal crests. Just a man in a plain suit, hands steady, eyes clear. Julian Markham stood off to the side, silent. When Adrian began to speak, his voice carried without force, quiet, honest, unafraid. My name is Adrian Rowan, he said. I am a teacher, a widower, a father. A murmur rippled through the room. For most of my life, Adrian continued, I believed my story was small, ordinary. I believed that was enough. He paused. Recently, I learned that parts of my family's history were deliberately removed from public record, not because they were shameful, but because they were inconvenient. The room went still. Adrian didn't accuse. He didn't shout. He didn't dramatize. He simply told the truth. My father, Sebastian Rowan, existed, he said. He lived. He loved. And he was erased to preserve a version of stability that demanded silence. He took a breath. I am not here to claim a crown, Adrian said. I am here to claim truth. A journalist shouted a question. Do you believe you are the rightful heir? Adrian met the question calmly. I believe, he said, that no nation is strengthened by lies, no matter how old. The statement spread across the world in seconds. The palace responds. Inside Ashbourne Palace, the air was electric. Phones rang. Advisors argued. Sir Malcolm Vere paced like a trapped animal. It's done, he said. If we don't shut this down now. King Alaric III raised a hand. Enough. Everyone froze. The king had been watching the broadcast in silence, his expression unreadable. At last he spoke. Prepare a statement, he said. Sir Malcolm nodded eagerly. Yes, your majesty. Denial, clarification, reassurance. No, Alaric interrupted. Sir Malcolm faltered. Alaric turned slowly. Prepare a statement acknowledging the investigation, he said. and my intention to address the nation personally. Sir Malcolm's face drained of color. You can't, he whispered. This will destabilize. Alaric's voice was firm. It already has, he said. The only question is whether we meet it with dignity. Sir Malcolm stared at him. You would sacrifice the crown? He demanded. Alaric answered quietly. No, he said. I would sacrifice my certainty. Sir Malcolm understood then. And for the first time in decades he was powerless. Amelia speaks, not as queen but as woman. Amelia Rowan stood before the press that afternoon, alone. No king at her side. No prepared remarks. Her voice trembled only once. I have lived inside silence, she said. I believed loyalty meant protecting institutions at all costs. She paused. I was wrong. The cameras flashed. My grandmother helped bury truths she believed were dangerous, Amelia said. I inherited that silence, and I choose not to pass it on. A reporter asked, Are you resigning? Amelia shook her head gently. I am standing, she said. But I will no longer stand between the people and the truth. Her words traveled farther than any crown ever had. Catherine's sacrifice. That evening, Catherine Hale sat with her children on the floor, building something crooked and joyful out of blocks. George looked up. Mummy, he asked, are people angry with us? Catherine's heart tightened. Some are confused, she said softly. But confusion is how learning begins. Charlotte studied her carefully. Are we still who we are? She asked. Catherine smiled and kissed her forehead. Yes, she said. And that's what matters. Later that night, Catherine met the king one last time. Alaric looked older than he ever had. I will step aside, he said quietly. Not today. Not in disgrace. But with honesty. Catherine met his gaze. That's all anyone can ask, she said. Alaric nodded. And you? He asked. Will you remain? Catherine thought of the ring. Of the threats. Of the weight she had carried. I will remain, she said. But not as a shield for lies. Alaric bowed his head. Then the crown may yet survive, he said. The nation hears the truth. The king addressed the nation 2 days later. He did not deny. He did not excuse. He acknowledged. There are questions, he said. And questions deserve answers. He announced a full independent inquiry. Transparent. Public. Unprecedented. Markets wavered, but did not collapse. People argued, but they listened. For the first time in generations, the crown chose openness over control. Adrian's peace. Adrian returned home that night to his daughter, who ran into his arms. Daddy, she said, are you famous now? He laughed softly. No, he said. I'm just honest. She smiled. That's better. Adrian looked at the quiet street, the ordinary life he had once thought was all he'd ever have. And he realized something profound. He didn't need a throne. He needed acknowledgement. History had tried to erase him. It failed. The crown after truth. Months later, Catherine stood in the palace gardens as bells rang, not for celebration but remembrance. The ring lay locked away. Not destroyed. Not worn. Preserved as a symbol, not of entitlement but of accountability. The monarchy endured. Changed. Humbled. And for the first time in a very long time. Honest. Final word. Truth did not destroy the crown. It remade it. And the nation learned a lesson it would never forget. Power built on silence will always crack. Power built on truth can bend and survive.